Hello everyone. Thank you for returning to my channel. Today, I bring you the newest episode in the series about Hoai and Hung, two people who have endured misunderstandings, struggles, and storms, yet still chose to stand beside each other on a difficult journey of love. And after everything they have been through, after all the days when a happy ending seemed impossible, the wedding that everyone has been waiting for has finally taken place. It marks an important turning point, a day filled with hope, trust, and even tears of happiness from Hoai, Hung, and all their loved ones. So in today's video, what happened? What was the atmosphere of the ceremony like? How did Hoai and Hung feel in those sacred moments? Let's watch together to discover each special detail and to fully experience the journey they fought so hard to reach. The journey that finally led them to this beautiful day. The love between Hoai and Officer Hung was never a smooth path. She was a single mother, quietly strong in the midst of life's uncertainties, raising little Tony on her own with all the tenderness a mother could give. Tony was gentle and well-behaved, yet in his eyes there was always a small empty space, the space left by a father who had never appeared in the early years of his life. Hung, on the other hand, was a man who seemed unshakably tough, difficult for anyone to get close to. As a police officer, he ran toward danger, put responsibility and compassion before himself, and often did not realize how lonely he truly was. And yet, they found each other through the simplest, most ordinary things. The afternoons when Hung waited at the gate for Hoai to finish work, pretending to be just passing by. The moments he silently shielded her and Tony when sudden rain poured down, his shirt soaked while Hoai insisted she did not need help, even though her heart warmed in a way she could not explain. The quiet dinners in a small kitchen, where the three of them sat close together like a family that had always existed. Perhaps the thing that changed Hung's heart the most was Tony's laughter whenever he sat on Hung's shoulders. A clear, innocent sound, as if filling the gaps the boy had carried for so long. Each time, Hoai could only watch in silence, her heart trembling softly. Little by little, those small, ordinary moments became the invisible thread that tied the three of them together. Until one day, in a completely unguarded moment, Tony wrapped his arms around Hung's neck and called out, "Dad!" Hung. Hung froze. Not because he was shocked, but because his heart had already softened long before that moment. And in that instant, he understood. What he wanted was not just to protect them. He wanted to become their lifelong home. The wedding day arrived as gently as a dream, the kind of dream people do not dare to reach for, yet when it finally comes, everything feels slow, sacred, and unreal in the most beautiful way. The small church carried a quiet elegance. White roses lined both sides of the aisle, their soft fragrance drifting lightly in the air. It was all prepared with great care by Tieu, the sister who loved her brother deeply and wanted every moment of this day to be perfect. When the church doors opened, Hoai appeared. She did not need a dazzling gown or glittering jewels. Only a simple white dress, as pure as her spirit, a spirit that had endured scars yet never stopped hoping. With every step she took, soft whispers of emotion rose from the guests. They watched her as though witnessing a flower bloom after a long, cold rain. Hung stood at the altar, wearing a black suit. His eyes were steady, carrying the weight of a silent promise, though his hands trembled, the trembling of a man who had been alone for too long and was finally allowed to hold something precious. He had never seen Hoai as beautiful as she was today. It tightened his heart. In the front row, little Tony sat on CEO Hai's lap, his bright eyes fixed on his mother. The small bouquet he held swayed back and forth, as if cheering her on, as if saying in the only way a child who cannot yet speak clearly could. "Mom, I am here. I am happy." The moment made everyone in the church smile. Not loudly, but warmly, the warmth of a family quietly healing from old wounds. Before stepping onto the aisle, Hoai bent down and placed a gentle kiss on Tony's cheek. Tony closed his eyes and wrapped his little arms around her neck. The scene was simple, yet it felt as though the entire church softened, because everyone understood that today was not only the wedding of Hoai and Hung, but also the day their small family became complete. Under the flickering candlelight, the priest began the ceremony, and Hoai and Hung slowly turned to face each other. Their eyes met, deep, warm, telling the story of everything they had endured. Hung held her hands and spoke softly, his voice trembling with emotion. "I promise to love you and your child for the rest of my life. No matter what, I will hold your hand and walk with you to the very end." Hoai smiled, her eyes glimmering. "I promise to build a beautiful family with you. A place where you and Tony will always feel safe." Tieu and Hoai sat below, fingers intertwined, watching with gentle, emotional eyes. It felt as though they were witnessing not just a wedding, but the moment a family was truly born, the moment two hearts that had once been wounded found a place to belong. Outside the church, a soft breeze drifted by and the wind chimes rang faintly, as if joining the ceremony that no one wanted time to move too quickly. After the reception, the church courtyard slowly quieted down. Soft music still played somewhere in the background, blending with the warm yellow light stretching across the stone steps. Guests left in small groups, each carrying a satisfied smile, as if they had just witnessed a fairy tale unfolding before their eyes. Amid the fading excitement, Tony, after a full day of running, laughing, and being passed from arm to arm, grew so tired that his eyelids drooped heavily. He rested his head on Hoai's shoulder, his tiny hand gripping Hoai's collar as if seeking a familiar place of safety. His breathing was steady and light, like a kitten falling asleep in the afternoon. Hoai held Tony with rare gentleness. One arm supported the boy's back, while the other shielded him from the breeze. Every movement was soft, so unlike the sharp, commanding presence he showed as a powerful CEO. Standing beside him, Tieu watched the scene with a warm curve on her lips. Her smile glowed softly like the church lights reflected on the glass windows. Her eyes were full of pride, full of joy at seeing her family surrounded by happiness. She stepped closer to Hoai and Hung, speaking quietly but filled with affection. "Go enjoy your honeymoon. We will take care of Tony." Truly, Hoai is obsessed with him now. He has been holding him since this afternoon and refuses to let go. "Everyone is so happy for you today." What seemed like a simple comment left Hung speechless for a few seconds. He looked at his sister, the girl who had endured hardship with him for years, who had seen him hopeful, disappointed, lonely, and broken. A sister who protected him in her own way, never asking for anything in return. Today, she had given him far more than help with the wedding preparations. She had given him trust. She had accepted Hoai, and she had embraced Tony, a child their family had never known, yet now held as if he were their own. Hung drew a deep breath, but his throat tightened. The word, "thank you," simple as it was, would not come out. In the end, he simply placed a hand on Tieu's shoulder and gave a gentle squeeze. A small gesture, yet enough for his sister to understand everything he felt. Hoai stood beside her husband, her hands still clasped in his. Watching them, her heart seemed to soften completely. Tony slept peacefully in Hoai's arms. Tieu stood quietly at his side. Hung stood still but warm. It was the image of a real family, something Hoai once believed she could never have. Her eyes shimmered, not with sadness, but with a deep sense of belonging. She realized she was no longer alone. She no longer had to be strong by herself. She no longer had to fear loss. She turned her head toward Hung. Their eyes met, gentle, quiet, yet filled with the same understanding. "I am so happy. And I know I have finally found my home." As they stepped out of the church courtyard to prepare for their brief honeymoon, a small ache tugged at Hoai's heart. For years, Tony had never been away from her for more than a few hours. He was her life, her hope, her entire world. But tonight, she felt calm. A calmness so pure it startled her. Because Tony no longer had only her. He was sleeping in the arms of people who loved him wholeheartedly, without hesitation, without conditions. At that moment, Hoai placed a hand over her chest. The warmth she felt was not a fleeting dream. It was the beginning of a true home. A place where she and Tony finally belonged. The car glided gently along the riverside road, the streetlights reflecting on the water like thousands of fallen stars. The quietness after the wedding ceremony softened every sound, slowing everything down, leaving room for the emotions rising in the hearts of the newlyweds. When the car stopped in front of a small riverside villa, Hoai looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. The villa rested under a line of trees, its warm yellow lights shining through the windows as if inviting them in, soft and comforting like an embrace. This was not the place recommended by the reception venue. It was the place Hung had secretly prepared weeks in advance, every detail, every decoration, every scent chosen with his own heart. When the door opened, Hoai froze for a moment. Inside was a scene so beautiful it stole her breath. On the pristine white bed, red rose petals formed a large heart, each petal placed gently as if handled with absolute care. Vanilla-scented candles flickered along the shelves, filling the room with a warm, sweet fragrance that made everything feel like a soft dream. A sheer curtain swayed lightly in the breeze, reflecting the golden light into a soft glow that wrapped the entire room. Hoai stood still. She did not blink, did not even breathe deeply, simply stared, as if afraid the scene would disappear if she moved. Her voice trembled. "You did all of this, for me?" One question, yet filled with so many emotions: surprise, tenderness, happiness, and the quiet ache of someone who once believed she did not deserve something this magical. Hung stepped behind her, his strong arms wrapping firmly around her waist. He rested his forehead lightly on her shoulder, his warm breath brushing her skin and sending a shiver down her spine. His voice was lower, rougher than usual. "Because tonight is the first night we truly become husband and wife." His arms tightened, as if to anchor her in place, to remind her that she was here, in his embrace, no longer carrying strength alone, no longer running through life by herself. Hoai placed her hand over his, her heart trembling, not from fear, but from the overwhelming tenderness filling her all at once. For a few seconds, the room was silent. But that silence spoke more clearly than any words. They had walked through so much pain to stand beside each other at this moment. And tonight would mark the beginning of an entirely new chapter in their lives. Hung opened the bottle of red wine he had prepared earlier that afternoon. The soft pop of the cork echoed through the quiet room, warm and gentle, like a signal that something special was about to begin. He poured the wine into 2 thin crystal glasses. The deep red liquid shimmered under the vanilla candlelight, forming soft streaks of color so beautiful that Hoai could only watch, her heart tightening with emotion. Hung walked toward her and handed her a glass. Their fingertips brushed for only a moment, but it was enough to send a faint tremor through her, as if every feeling she had tried to hide was suddenly awakened. She looked up and met his eyes, soft in a way she rarely saw in this strong, stoic man. He said nothing, yet his gaze carried tenderness, a promise, and a kind of love she had never dared to imagine for herself. They moved to the large window. Outside, the river shimmered with reflections of lights, stretching like an endless trail of stars. A gentle breeze drifted in, carrying the cool scent of water, making the room feel even more peaceful. They touched their glasses together. The quiet clink echoed like an unspoken vow. Hoai took a sip. The slight bitterness spread across her tongue before melting into a warm sweetness. In that moment, it felt as though all her worries, fears, and old wounds dissolved into the night. What remained was peace, and the man standing beside her. After a while, Hung set his glass down and gently turned on the TV. Hoai assumed he wanted to play music to add to the mood. But the screen did not show a movie. It was not music. It was a video he had spent many late nights secretly making for her. The first scene appeared. Hoai working tirelessly, sleeves rolled up, tending to tasks and caring for Tony at the same time. Her eyes back then were strong yet tired, determined yet lonely. The next clip showed Hung watching from a distance, quietly looking out for her, sometimes through a glance, sometimes by placing his jacket over her and Tony when sudden rain fell. Then came the moment that left Hoai breathless. Tony holding Hung's hand for the first time. The tiny, soft hand gripping his rough fingers with absolute trust. The screen shifted again. The three of them on a picnic, Tony sitting on Hung's shoulders while Hoai smiled beside them, a moment so perfect it looked like a family that had always belonged together. And finally, simple white text appeared on the screen, yet it hit her like a wave. "Thank you for giving me the chance to become a better man." Hoai could no longer hold back. Tears fell, sliding down her cheeks, light yet heavy enough to make her shoulders tremble. Not from sadness, but from too much tenderness, too much love, too much gratitude. Hung did not say anything. He simply stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if gathering every piece of her past pain into an embrace he would never let go of. His voice rose softly above her head. "From now on, you will never be alone again." A short sentence. But for Hoai, a woman who had weathered storms by herself for so many years, it was the most beautiful, the warmest, and the most sacred promise she had ever received. The music played softly, like a gentle breeze passing through and melting into the candlelit room. The delicate melody made everything slow down, leaving only the sound of their hearts and their breathing. Hung stepped closer, extending his hand toward Hoai. His voice lowered, gentle enough to make her lift her eyes to him. "My love, will you dance with me?" Those two words, "my love," felt strangely warm. Hoai had never imagined she would one day hear such a phrase, especially from the man who had entered her life quietly yet deeply enough to change everything. She placed her hand in his. Hung's hand was warm and steady, a silent reassurance. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had always belonged together. Hung pulled her gently into his arms. They moved slowly to the music, soft steps, easy and unhurried. No fancy choreography, no bright spotlight like a grand wedding ballroom. Just a man and a woman. After years of being hurt, being alone, struggling through life. Now standing together, finding peace in each other's embrace. Hoai rested her head against Hung's chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong, steady, but a little faster than usual. That sound made her smile, because she knew he was just as moved as she was. Hung placed his hand on her waist, holding her gently, as if saying, "I am here. You do not have to be afraid anymore." Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. In that moment, words were replaced by breath, by warmth, and by the way they held each other, slow, tender, full of devotion. The night breeze outside carried the scent of the river into the room, blending with the vanilla fragrance, making the moment feel even more sacred. And that night was the night they did not just become husband and wife on paper, but truly became husband and wife in their hearts. In love, in trust, and in the promise to walk together for the rest of their lives. Hung bent down, gently sliding one arm under Hoai's knees and the other behind her back. In a tender, deliberate motion, he lifted her as if he were carrying a treasured gift he had waited his whole life to receive. Hoai startled slightly, then softly wrapped her arms around his neck. Being held by a strong man, not out of duty, not because he needed to protect her and her child, but simply because he loved her, tightened her chest with an emotion she could not name. Hung walked slowly toward the bed covered with rose petals. The candlelight cast their shadows onto the wall, the silhouette of two people holding one another, merging into one shape. Soft music whispered through the room. The scent of vanilla lingered in the air. The warmth rose with each breath. He laid Hoai down on the bed with such care that it felt as though even a slightly stronger touch might cause her to melt into the breeze. She looked up at him, her eyes glimmering in the candlelight. On. Her voice was as light as a breath. Hung lowered himself, his forehead touching hers. I am here. A short answer, yet carrying all the gentleness he had never given to anyone else. Hoai smiled, her cheeks warming with emotion. I am so happy. Hung brushed her hair back, his fingers lightly grazing her cheek, warm and soft. So am I. Because of you. And because of Tony. Hearing her son's name made her heart tremble. Her happiness did not come only from loving Hung, but from knowing that Tony finally had a real family, a father figure he had always been missing. In her husband's arms, Hoai closed her eyes. Not because she was tired, not because she was sleepy, but because she wanted to feel every second of this moment, the moment her heart experienced complete peace for the first time in years. She no longer worried about tomorrow. No longer feared loss. No longer had to carry strength alone. Because now she knew. She truly had a family. A place to return to. A shoulder to lean on. A man to walk beside. And that night, in the warm candlelight, surrounded by rose petals, Hoai felt more clearly than ever that the happiness she once believed would never belong to her was now resting gently in her hands. The wedding night ended in warm candlelight and the gentle breaths of the newlyweds. Outside, the steady sound of the river flowed on, as if offering blessings for the journey they had just begun. But the happiness of Hoai and Hung has only reached its first page. Tomorrow, when dawn rises over the riverside, unexpected things will be waiting for them. New emotions during their honeymoon. Changes in their family life. And stories unfolding at home while Tony is cared for by tieu and CEO Hoai. Will their new journey remain as peaceful as tonight? Or will it reveal new challenges that make their love even stronger? Join us in the next episode to follow the heartfelt moments of Hoai, Hung, and their little family.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mọi người sẽ thấy mình quay một cái góc khác vì mình đang ngồi làm trên cái lab. Mọi người có thể sẽ thấy hơi ồn tại vì cái laptop này, cái quạt nó bị muốn hư rồi, nó cứ kêu ù hoài. Mình đang cố cho xong công việc thì mình còn đi tắm này. Bây giờ là 7 giờ rồi nhưng mà mình vẫn chưa xong công việc. Mình đang muốn cố hoàn thành. Cảm ơn mọi người đã yêu thương và ủng hộ cho video của mình. Hôm nay mình không kịp làm video live nữa. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều